were the ones who initially connected, and now we had the pleasure to meet you through him. But David, why don't you start us off?
Sure, let's go.
Okay, welcome to this podcast. We're speaking with Abood Cohen. Abood Cohen, I met you a couple of years ago when I came to your version of the Samaritan Shavuot. It's a holiday that both of us celebrate, but because you have a different way of calculating the calendar, we sometimes celebrate it. In fact, even every year we celebrate Shavuot on a different year. But let's take something like Pesach, where sometimes we'll celebrate on the same year. This year, you'll be celebrating Pesach this week.
After you,
hopefully I'll come to visit you. But I came to visit you on your Shavuot, and it was an amazing night. And we thought that this would be an amazing conversation. I feel like Samaritans, they're like the key. They're like the key to something that we're working on. I've spoken to a little bit about the Canaanite project that we're working on. Reconciliation between Palestinians and the Jews living in this land. And the Samaritans are kind of right in the middle. And maybe you can take it from here and tell us a little bit. I'm sure a lot of listeners might not even know what a Samaritan is. Yeah. Instead of me explaining what a Samaritan is, you just tell us who you are. Sure. And you can take it from here.
Yeah, like you said, this year specifically, we have our festivals, the Passover festival, about a month after the Jewish Passover festival. So for those who don't know, we have Passover because we have Torah. We believe in the first 5 books of Moses. And this is because we also believe that we are part of the sons of Israel, the Israelites, who entered the land 3,650 years ago. This is our calendar years, by the way, 3,656 to be more exact. And this is basically since the Israelites' entry to the land. Now, after the Israelites' entry to the land, in our tradition, in the Samaritan tradition, Joshua was appointed by Moses to lead the Israelites into the Holy Land, to basically, or into the land of Canaan, as we call it as well, to basically to establish the Ark of the Covenant on Mount Gerizim. Now, this is the most important key point to understand for many people. The difference between the Jewish people and the Samaritans does not lie in the commandments and how we practice certain things. I mean, there's of course that, but the most important difference is the holy place, the place where we believe Abraham and Isaac story happened, where Abraham almost sacrificed his son, the story of Jacob when he had the dream of the angels falling and climbing up and down a ladder that used to be connected to the sky, basically symbolic of heaven, and and other stories as well. Now we also have the ancient Hebrew font or text, you can call it. So Hebrew is of course used today is known as Hebrew, but the actual font is Assyrian font. The written font is the Assyrian font. However, if you hear both of them, you'll see the similarities. It's incredible, If I want to say in the beginning in Samaritan, I would say Barashet. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Barashet bara Eluhem it eshamim with aris. While if it was in the Hebrew used today by the Jewish people, Barashit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et aretz. You can see those similarities. So the thing that really started to, let's say, like the spark that started the difference for us, is that we believe there were 2 high priests. Basically, there was one high priest. His name was Uzi, who was leading the Israelites after 400 years already of the Ark of the Covenant and Mishkan, which is what's called the
tabernacle.
The tabernacle. Yeah. Thank you. To have been on Mount Gerizim. Uzi was the leader over there at that time. And then there was another person, his name was Eli, who came to Uzi and told him, hey, why should you be the high priest? I'm also from the Cohen tribe. I'm also from the Levi tribe. And I want to be the high priest because I believe God chose me. And he eventually had this argument with Uzi, who we believe Uzi was the rightful person to be the high priest. And they had this agreement, and eventually Eli takes tribes away from Mount Gerizim to build his own tabernacle in a place called Shiloh, which is about 30 minutes away from Mount Gerizim to the south. And this is where things started to kind of escalate to be different, like, to have different opinions of where the place should be, and eventually the Torah also changed. If you want to dive deep into that, we can. But I think the key points to understand it, eventually Solomon built the tabernacle inside a temple in Jerusalem. And so we have two parallel stories that have kind of, differences in where the place of the holy place should have been, and then eventually, of course, you have two kingdoms, the kingdom of Samaria in the north and the kingdom of Judah in the south. I know I skipped really fast forward. I just wanted to give you a fast summary, but at least this is an important thing to also mention. You have the kingdom of Samaria, where Samaritans, up to 1 million Samaritans, lived in the north of the land of Canaan. It's incredible to understand that today there's only 850 Samaritans left of those 1 million. And one of the reasons why this happened is because the nations who controlled the north were often actually different than the nations who controlled the south. And this caused, and also the Samaritans were really, they revolted a lot against any nation that came here. And especially the Byzantines, they killed over a third of the population of the Samaritans during 3 revolts. And really, we never had an exile, only an Assyrian exile, which we believe not really necessarily happened to a lot of Samaritans, because there were different nations living in the north, really. But yeah, today DNA evidence also shows that Samaritans are actually really especially the Cohen Samaritans are connected to the Jewish Cohens, which opens up a lot of questions, So yeah, I'll leave it to you guys to really open up any questions, because there's, you can write a whole book about this whole history.
There's so many things to follow up on.
That's interesting. Maybe this is a good time to ask my Cohen question. So Abood, I'm actually a Cohen. My family surname was originally Katz, which stands for Cohen Tsedaka. It's a specific line of the Kohanim for Jews, especially in Europe. So do Samaritan Cohens think of Jewish Cohens as part of the same tribe, or do you think of us as distinct, as separate because of the split that you discuss, and there's no engagement between us now? We're two separate peoples almost.
Well, the Jewish people are considered part of the sons of Israel, absolutely, like the tribe of Judah. However, not only the tribe of Judah, but also half of Levi, because in our tradition, half of the tribe of Levi did go with Eli to build the tabernacle in Shiloh. So yes, to answer your question, yes, we do believe that the Cohens are connected. However, we do believe that they have really, they have been mistakenly led by Eli to build the tabernacle in not the correct place, if you know what I mean. And traditionally, we have the story that one day our Ta'ib, we call him, like the equivalent of the Mashiach for the Jewish people, Ta'ib, he will reunite the Jewish people and the Samaritans in one place. In our case, you can guess where, in Mount Gerizim, so.
Now, you say you...
Sorry,
before you get your question, okay, good. Go for it.
It relates to Mount Gerizim, so I want to get it in real quick, and David, you can have the next one. So, where in Judaism, of course, we specifically believe that the binding of Isaac occurred on Mount Moriah. That's really the first place where Mount Moriah in Jerusalem is mentioned for us. Do you guys believe that your Mount Moriah, where Isaac was bound, was in Mount Gerizim? And I also was told from a Samaritan friend that Mount Gerizim is mentioned in the 10 Commandments itself in the Samaritan Pentateuch. Is that correct as well? So,
correct.
Are either one of those the origin, or is one more true, or however you want to address that? So, I'm quite fascinated. Yeah.
So correct. So we do believe that this is the Mount of Moriah, and if in fact it has, Mount Gerizim has 13 names in our tradition, and of course it starts with when God told Abraham, go to one of the mountains that I will show you, Le'echad Harim, one of the mountains. This is already one of the names of Mount Gerizim, Echad Harim. And also Mount Moriah, right? Because this is where God showed Abraham, the angel showed Abraham the sheep instead of Isaac. So yeah, to answer your question, definitely it is one and the same mountain, basically.
And is it also mentioned in your Ten Commandments that
Oh,
that you
correct.
shall establish a temple or sanctuary for God on Mount
Yeah, so
Gerizim?
this is an interesting point. This is an interesting point because in our tradition, the first and second commanded that would otherwise have been two commandments in the Jewish tradition are considered one. Like I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other God before me. We count this and we consider it as the same meaning, which some people will ask, well, how come, if you do that, then that means that you have nine, where in fact we have a 10th commandment, which is a kind of a big text, which talks about a commandment that tells that asks and commands the Israelites that when you shall cross the Jordan River, you shall go and build the altar that I command you today on Mount Gerizim, and asking basically to choose a place where the Levites shall kind of govern the tribes.
Very,
So
very
basically, we both believe that both Jews and the Samaritans both believe in the Torah, but there's a fact that they're almost identical except for a few very specific changes. And the question is, which one added or which one subtracted? And that's something that it's a mystery. I believe that the Samaritans, to be honest, even though I'm Jewish, you have a good case because Jerusalem, I'll just say, in the 5 books of Moses, Jerusalem is never mentioned once. But in the Jewish Torah, it says, when you come to Eretz Canaan and you go to the place where I will choose, that's where you should make your sanctuary, your temple. Now, for you, it says in the place that I've already chosen, right?
Yes, in the past
but
tense.
But what makes the Samaritan argument kind of compelling is that not only is Jerusalem not mentioned, but Shechem, which is the city where Har Gerizim is on, is central to the 5 books of Moses. That's where Abraham comes first. He makes an altar there. He doesn't make an altar in Jerusalem. He makes an altar there. Then Yaakov lives there later on. So you guys.
I see what you mean. We do have a compelling case, but I have to be fair as well and not be biased, because I'm a Samaritan here, and I have to kind of look at other points as well. We're only 850, so some people might say like, yeah, it's easy kind of for you to change because it's 850. Maybe you change the Torah and then it's easy to spread it around because again, only 850 people. So I'll give you one of the interesting. What did you say? Sorry, David.
You are now, but used to be.
True.
Used to be millions of people in the north.
Yes. But as a very curious person, I had to dig. Even until today, I'm still searching for answers. Not to prove anything, but just out of curiosity of what really happened and how did things change. And if you look at the different evidence of here and there, there's both evidence for both people really. I want to share a few things. For example, one of the things that I really want to understand why this change happened. It says, and the Torah says, and then God finished his work and everything of all of his work on the earth and heavens. And then God finished his work on the 6th day. This is in the Samaritan Torah. And then rested on the 7th day. While in the Jewish Torah it says, and God finished his work on the 7th day and rested on the 7th day. However, we keep Shabbat on both times when it's Friday sunset. So I really wonder what happens. What are the differences here, and who would interpret as more correct? Because both kind of make sense in some ways.
And why would someone changed it, right? So, but whoever changed it, why would they change it?
Right.
The answer could be broken telephone.
It could be by mistake, but these
it could be by mistake.
Are really hard to.
I have a story.
Can I share what? Oh, go ahead. Share the story first.
Let me say my story. You heard the Baal Shem Tov?
Yes.
So the Baal Shem Tov was the founder of Hasidut. It's a Jewish mystical form of worship that was founded in Eastern Europe. There's a story, and he's a mystic, so he has special powers. Can heal, and he has insights and stuff. He was hosting Shabbat, and all of his Hasidim, all of his followers are at the Shabbat table, and after that, they're reminiscing. After the Shabbat, there's like, wow, this was such an amazing Shabbat, and what was so amazing is that the Baal Shem Tov the entire night was speaking only to me. We were just having a one-on-one conversation. Everyone was eating and singing, but we were just, and the other guy was like, "What? No, that's not how it went." The whole night he was talking only to me, and everyone else was singing, and we're just having a one-on-one conversation. And you have different people remembering the same thing differently, and it's both true. Somehow it's both true in this kind of quantum reality that we live in. Maybe we live in like a quantum reality where he's here and he's there. The Jesus, the Gospels are the same thing, and people talk about this as a way of discounting the Gospels because there's discrepancies. The Matthew remembers it this way, Mark remembers it this way, and it's like, or they kind of like, it's another quantum thing where it's like, no, it actually did happen that way, and it did happen that. Now, that's maybe an answer. It's a little out of the box answer, but the way that I see it is that we have different pieces of the puzzle. What I find about the strengthening rather than weakening. Oh look, Matthew remembered Jesus this way, Mark remembered this way. Oh, the Torah, the Samaritan Torah is written this way, the Jewish Torah is written that way. What it actually does is, oh, the Baal Shem Tov, he spoke to me. It kind of shows that how something happened. Okay, something happened. Now you remember it this way, I remember it that way. But what do we have in common? That was that this thing happened on Har Sinai. That's what we have. We have that in common. We're two different groups, but we both reckon. And actually, you can take it further with Christianity and Islam. Like we're all agreeing on so much. I mean, we have the same prophets, right? Islam, Christianity, we have the same prophet, but we have these little differences.
You heard that story of like the blind men that were touching an elephant, and each one described a different part of the elephant. Because like if you touch the tail, it's like, oh, I'm touching a rope. And if you touch the trunk, it's like, oh, this is a tree trunk. Like, you know what I mean? Or if you're touching the nose, you think this is a hose. You know what I mean? And they're all touching the same thing, but they're all getting a different perspective of their own reality, kind of.
Where's that story come from?
I like that story.
What tradition
it's like
is that?
Hinduism or Buddhism, something like that.
I know that one,
Yeah.
And there's also a historical element to where some of the additional similarities come in. So David, you're 100% correct. I think from taking off my Jewish hat and putting on a historical lens, I think the understanding is there used to be many Canaanite cultures that engage in what you're saying, right? Like there's a common foundational religion, but there's little variations that they're just remembering a little differently. But then after the Assyrian conquest, at least from the historical record, there was probably a lot of refugees that came down into Judah and brought with them the Samaritan Pentateuch. And from there, that our Torah, the Jewish Torah, was revised and grafted in a lot more of the Samaritan culture. So that's another element to this puzzle. That we're
especially Deuteronomy, I think. I heard.
Yes, and you can tell by the name we use for God in Deuteronomy, right? Because we're much more likely to use El, right? And which is actually more common for the Samaritan Pentateuch, right? Yeah, that's how you can kind of tell just by linguistic details. And so there's many elements to this puzzle, but David, I think you captured it on its head. There's something foundational, and these different Canaanite cultures, they branched off, they focused on their localities, but they had that same foundation. I think the Samaritans represented something from the north. We were from the south, but it got bridged after, I think, Assyria. And Judaism today was mainly, I would say, more so a syncretic version, right? One that brought together probably the old Judean beliefs with the Samaritan beliefs, and it became more syncretic. So I think that's what the historical record provides, but it's interesting nonetheless.
That's a good point.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah. Well, I have a follow-up to something you said at the very beginning, and it's something that we spoke about before you hopped on the phone. Let's start with me talking about how I see the Jewish people. It's a big controversy, especially lately, that I say that Jewish is an ethnicity, and that we have a religion. Okay, now it's a very common thing lately for people to say there's Judaism, the religion, and there's no Jewish people. There's people who practice the Jewish religion, and maybe you can help us, because I think maybe the same thing's happening with you. The Samaritans people. I will actually have two questions. Why exactly do you call yourselves Samaritans and not Israeli or like
We don't
Bnei
call
Israel?
ourselves Samaritans, actually.
No, it's an
We don't use that word much. We might have used it a few times. We actually use the sons of Israel.
So internally, you call yourselves Bnei Israel.
Bani Israel. Yes.
But because we call you Samaritans, you just go with the flow and say, okay, we're Samaritans. Okay, so that's one question. And the second question is, are you? There's someone named Nadir Sadaka. Do you know this person?
Of course.
Okay, so now he was born Samaritan, but I think he converted to Islam.
He did not exactly convert to Islam. Okay. I believe I don't know, like he's a kind of an open-ended, belief in many. He never said that. He never claimed that he became Muslim. He just does identify as a Samaritan. However, he's not religious or particularly believing in any anything.
If I can ask, is it mutually exclusive to be a Samaritan and a Muslim? Are there Samaritan Muslims?
No, not that I'm aware of. There are some people who have left the Samaritan religion, for example, to become Jewish, but that's because of some personal things in their life.
But it's an exclusive term. You can't be both.
Yeah, you cannot.
Okay, I see.
Okay, so I guess you're answering the question is whether it's an ethnicity or if it's a religion. Because I guess if you can't be both, then it is more religion. Well, I mean, let me you answer the question. Is it an ethnicity? Is it a religion? Is it both?
It's one of those questions that always come up from tourists when I give a tour. Is that wait, after an hour of an explanation, for example, it's like, wait, I don't get it. Are you guys Jewish or not?
Right. And, I can kind of get why.
Yeah, and and I always try to kind of make it as clear as possible by telling them it's more complicated than you think. It's yes and no. It's yes, we are Jewish because today the word Jewish is given to anyone who believes in the Torah and believes in the land of Canaan and believes and reads Hebrew, and we have all that. However, we have different kind of sets of beliefs. So we don't exactly call ourselves Jews because of some things. For example, one, because we're not from the tribe of Judah. Right. And this is probably where the word Jewish comes from. Correct me if I'm wrong. And second is because, again, we have our own set of, beliefs about the Torah. So we just call ourselves Bani Israel, really. Even though we're from the tribe of Levi and Joseph, but there is no word to describe the kingdom of Samaria other than the word Samaria. And also the kingdom of Samaria was called the kingdom of Israel, by the way. So at some point it was the kingdom of Israel in the north and the kingdom of Judah in the south. So does that answer your question more or less, David?
It does. Yeah.
I think a problem we have with these conversations is we're using modern terminology to describe something that's very ancient, right? In the modern day, it's mainly proselytizing religions that dominate this framework, right? Christianity and Islam. Back in the ancient times, it was a people, and within the people, you had the religion, you had the culture, it was all bound together. By him even referring himself, his community as Bnei Israel, right? The children of Israel, you're an ethnicity, right? Because you believe in common descent from Israel, right? Or at least for some were descendants of Aaron, et cetera, but you believe in common descent. That's a classic concept of ethnicity. You have a common language. You had Samaritan Hebrew, right? So you're checking off all these boxes. So in modern terms, we can say your ethnicity, but it's I would say you're a remnant of the ancient world, right? Something that doesn't fit neatly in the contemporary box of Christianity and Islam. And I think
Jews that's not uncommon in the region. That's very common in the region. There's the Druze that have an ethno-religion. There's the Yazidis that have an ethno-religion. There's a lot of identities are complicated when you go to the Middle East and ask people where they're from, what they consider themselves as Chaldeans, and say you can still be ethnically Assyrian, but I've met like Assyrians who have converted to Islam, but they still identify because there's an intrinsic part of them that was born Assyrian that they'll always be, identities are absolutely complicated. We should preface like all of our conversations about this region with identities are not black and white. There's a lot of gray. There's a lot of language but language does help us understand identities, and so there is like a tension for us to try to find the right vocabulary to define ourselves too. Because I feel like that's very affirming to me when I'm able to define myself too, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's go back to Sofi Tsedaka. I think you were kind of referencing Sofi Tsedaka. She's a singer. Now, she converted to Judaism. Now, maybe for personal reasons, maybe she wanted to marry someone Jewish. But so because she converted to Judaism, she's not considered Samaritan, I guess. But if you asked her if she considers herself Samaritan, I don't know. I'm guessing that maybe
in a documentary, she mentioned in a documentary once that if everything was okay for her to go back, she would go back. But again,
was she not allowed?
It's a special
she's not allowed
case.
To visit, or
it's not that she's not allowed. It's just that it's a community thing. You leave the community, you kind of hurt the feelings of people, like by telling. It's kind of like sending an indirect message of I don't like being here, or because the community never kicked her out. So she left because probably something happened with her other with her family. It's personal issues that I don't want to probably discuss. It's just between her and her family. She's an amazing person, to be honest. And I don't think I met her, but I know her online, and I did talk to her online a little bit. But but I would say that if the community really, if she comes to the community here, a lot of people like her. She's not really hated or anything like that. It's always an issue with people who leave the community because of breaking certain laws and they don't want to keep certain commandments anymore. In her case, Sofi Tsedaka, for those who really want to look her up, she was a famous singer and a famous. I don't know if she was an actor for a kids channel, but what's really interesting is that she still uses ancient Hebrew in her songs, which is amazing to kind of revive the Samaritan Hebrew in kind of modern music. So yeah.
My take is, if it sounds like it really is an ethnicity, where with a very, very strict creed that is, and I think Native Americans or Tertullians, I don't know how to call them, like of Turtle Island. No, then the First Nations, is that it is ethnicity, but I mean, you can get kicked out of the tribe. If you're not following the rules, you get kicked out of the tribe, and you have very, very strict rules. And some people just, they can't. It's very difficult. I know it's very difficult. The Jews have a lot of rules, and we have both basically the same rules, but Samaritans are kind of stricter. And some people just can't take it.
When you're 850, David, you can kind of imagine when you're 850, and especially we're just now communities split between living on Mount Gerizim near Nablus and the other half living in Tel Aviv and Holon. We know each other very well. Everyone knows each other very well. And so if someone misses Shabbat, you're obviously going to be, his place in the synagogue. There's an empty place in the synagogue. You'll see that. And what I'm trying to say is that when you're such a small community, you're kind of greedy. You kind of want people to stay in. And so when you say, is it an ethnicity? Yes, it is. But at the same time, it's also a community. And this community kind of makes it look like, from an outside perspective, some people look like they might think like we're a cult of some sort, because we're only 800. And if they come to the synagogue and they hear the chants, and they look at us as a very close, small community, they're probably going to think we're a cult. And I understand where it's coming from. But the reality is, we're a nation that used to be 1 million, and because of the wars, 100 years ago, I don't know if I mentioned this, in 1920 there was only 150 Samaritans left in the world, 150, and not talking about the 1,000. So how incredible that we survived.
I have a question. So in doing preparation for this conversation, the topic of conversion was one I wanted answered, about the Samaritan perspective on conversion. And in Judaism, we've had many debates about this question, right? Going back 2,000 years, the Sadducees were very anti-conversion. Pharisees were more lenient. 1,000 years later, it caused another split in Judaism. There's the Karaite Jews who don't allow conversion. Rabbinical Jews do allow it. What is this Samaritan perspective? Because I read a very interesting article. I believe it was Ukrainian women specifically that are being brought into the community to boost their numbers. But is that something that is authentic to the community and your perception on conversion, or is that something that's more recent, an innovation to boost your numbers, as you said, to be more greedy? That's something I had a big question on coming into this.
Yeah, we actually do allow conversion, but it's just, the circumstances kind of decide if it's easy or not. For example, if the man marries a woman outside the community, if he wants to marry a woman outside the community, then the woman has to go through a specific process of Samaritanizing, if you want to call it. She has to come here and live with us as a community. She has to live up to 6, maybe 7, up to 8 months, depending on how the husband and the father of the husband and the family has to, depending on how they see the woman is, is she keeping Shabbat well, and if she keeping all the kosher laws and all the if she really understands what she has to do. That's the real test. It's just real life scenarios, if you want to call them. And then when those few months finish, then the man will go to his father and he will tell him about, like the woman is okay and that she's ready. And then the day that they get married is the actual day where she becomes a Samaritan, and that she can eat, for example, from the Korban Pesach, right? Which, interestingly, this is the real test if you're accepted in the community or not, if you're allowed to eat from the Korban Pesach. Because we had some people who were men, a couple men who tried to convert into the community, and a few of them, it's only one of them spent over 5 years trying to be accepted to eat from the Korban Pesach. And he was just not accepted, even though he came to the synagogue, well, not almost every week. And this is, I think, worth mentioning, that the person who kept coming every week to the synagogue, every Shabbat, and kept learning under a teacher, was allowed to eat from the Korban Pesach. But it's more complicated, I think, than you might think, because he was allowed because he was adopted by a family. That's the thing. You need someone to kind of adopt you, to kind of lead you and take your hand and teach you all the things that you have to do as a Samaritan, you see?
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
So, for the listeners, the Korban Pesach is the Paschal lamb that you eat on Passover. Now, that for the Jewish people also, that used to be the center of the Passover festival. It's kind of, and the matzah was like the sideshow, right? Now, because the Jewish people don't have a temple. Actually, that's not even true. That's not even. For example, like you don't have a temple, and you don't do the other korbanot, but you still do the Pesach.
Yes.
Technically,
yes.
If you ask the rabbis, we are supposed to do every year. We're supposed to do the Pesach. You don't need a temple for the Pesach sacrifice, which is why every year, the Eve of Pesach, you'll have some radical settlers that will storm the Al-Aqsa and try to sacrifice a Paschal lamb, because technically they're right. That is what you're supposed to do. You don't need the temple to do this. And so technically on Pesach, I'm supposed to eat the Paschal lamb. And this goes to a question that we have from our group. We have a Canaan group, and we've asked questions for people who just want to know more about Samaritans. Is there a fast track for the Jewish people? It's hard to become a Samaritan, but if the Jewish people that were a member of the tribe already,
you can imagine it's definitely easier for them, because they've kept Shabbat. Okay. Probably they know, they have an idea of what Shabbat is and what kosher laws are. Even though our kosher is maybe in some ways slightly easier, in some ways it's harder. We'll talk about it later, but we have the same thing. So when a Jewish person wants to convert, it's definitely easier. But again, even if they are, especially for the males, it's just hard, because there's a community thing. There's the Hebrew thing. You have to kind of start learning how to speak Hebrew. And then when you read the Samaritan Hebrew, a little slight, just a small little mistake is just gonna be pointed out to you. And the reason why is because if you're sticking with the community, you're probably gonna be married one day, and then you're gonna have children, and then those children will have children, and then you have this whole family, generation of family that might come up with their own Samaritan dialect, and we don't want, I'm just giving you some examples.
I can relate. It's very much like the Jewish people, whether you're Ashkenazi or Tunisian. On Hadar's side, our kids are Tunisian, and like their grandfather is very, very. It's very important to pass on the way that you sing the verses, and
that's what Samaritan. That's what the word Samaritan is derived from. In our case, yes, we do call ourselves Bani Yisrael, the sons of Israel. But whenever we mention the word Samaritan for any reason, the word Samaritan is interpreted as Shomrim. Shomrim means keepers, guardians of the Torah, right?
Yeah.
While other people might say it's because we lived in Samaria. That's another argument, but that's,
From the Jewish point of view, and this is why I asked, why are you calling us Samaritans? Because this is kind of what I see is that in the Tanakh, the Jewish Bible, it was a word used to dismiss Bani Israel because there was like kind of like a split between Judea and Israel, and they were kind of like saying, they're not really like our brothers because they were taken away, and then the Assyrians brought in other people called and then the Gemara called them the in the Talmud they're called the Kutim. I don't know who the Kutim are supposed to be, but anyways, I can't remember which chapter this was in the Book of Kings.
The Book of
Kings. And they called them the Shomranim. Oh, they're the Shomranim, and they called them Shomranim because the capital of
Shomron.
The capital of the Israelite kingdom was called Shomron.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It was called Kutim as well because the belief is that we are the ones who were brought from Kuta, which is a city in Iraq, to replace those people. Yeah, to replace the people who were exiled from Shomron, and the Assyrians didn't want to leave the land empty, so they brought people from Kuta into the land, and those people who were already in the land of Shomron wanted to learn the religion of the people in that time.
But do you believe that? Sorry to interrupt, but do you believe that you?
We believe the story has happened, but not as Samaritans. It's for another nation, and especially because it was only 27,000 people that were exiled. That number at that time is a really small fraction of the Samaritan population at that time, you see. So the vast majority of the people that stayed in the land were still Samaritans, and they still kept the Torah, and they still kept the oral tradition. So what we're saying is that there was different tribes living in the north, and different people, so it might have not exactly been the Samaritans, you see. Especially DNA evidence does suggest that as well.
Absolutely.
I did the 23andMe test after a tourist kept sending me 1,000 messages to do it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and the results were amazing in many ways. I was shocked, as a Samaritan, I was not shocked as well, but it's just not really cool to see how your ancestors really never left the Holy Land here. 96% of the DNA is Levant, basically, of Samaritan.
Sorry if this is off topic. I thought those were illegal in the territories.
I thought so as well. I just got the thing in my mail. I sent the package. And
I think
people have. I hear that claim a lot.
An internet claim. Yeah,
exactly. That's what I'm saying, man. These internet claims, man.
But Abood, we were discussing that exact point before you got in. So one of the biggest, I think it's arguably like the earliest gripe Judaism has with the Samaritans is we believe that, like, not to use an incorrect term, many Jews would say half-breeds, right? They believe that you were mixed with a people that was foreign, and that brought in foreign idols, and traditional Judaism kind of took that as the first big gripe. And me and David said it's so ironic because more than any people in the land, Samaritans are genetically the closest to the ancient Canaanites of this land. You are the most indigenous. And so with modern evidence, we can outright disprove that claim. But if it's okay with everyone, I want to touch on some of the flashpoints and disagreements beyond even just that in Judaism, because I believe there have been historically a few. One that comes to the top of my head was when the Jews were returning from their exile from Babylon, the Samaritans actually offered to help rebuild our temple, and the Jews said no. And so that was another flashpoint that was very big. But the biggest one, and David already briefly mentioned this, was that the Hasmoneans, the heir to the Hasmoneans, his name was John Hyrcanus, actually destroyed the Samaritan temple. And that was definitely a flashpoint because the Romans were then occupying a few decades later, and the Jews had their revolts, and the Samaritans kind of stood out from those. But then later on, of course, the Byzantines became oppressive, and then we eventually united in a few revolts. You named a few of them, but that was a few hundred years after that. Can you speak about what, if anything, changed in the Samaritan religion with the destruction of your temple by the Jewish people, and which I think was a blasphemous thing that I view as my brother. I think that's a very big stain on the Jewish religion that we did that to you. But can you speak at all what tensions that caused between Samaritans and Jews from the Samaritan perspective, and how your faith, if at all, changed after destruction of your temple?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I know the story of Hyrcanus when he destroyed the Samaritan temple. However, in our case, there's a different belief. He might have destroyed a synagogue, really, in our case, which was kind of a replacement to the tabernacle, because in our tradition there was only one tabernacle that was built basically in the first year when the Israelites entered the land, and it stayed about 450 years serving where the Levites served inside it. And then because the tribes were not aligned anymore and they were split around the land of Canaan, the north and the south, then the Kosher of the high priest used to wear a belt where all the 12 stones used to be aligned, each for each tribe. Then that Kosher, that breast belt, did not work properly, which meant that the high priest could not really enter the tabernacle and serve the tabernacle correctly. Now, what happened because of this is that God had chose to send a prophet, and this prophet really hid the tabernacle somewhere around Mount Gerizim. This is the traditional story, and it will only be revived again once the nations of the sons of Israel reunite and be, kind of like, do the commandments correctly in the Torah. However, coming back to your story, it's still, of course, a horrendous thing that we got this destruction by John Hyrcanus. And there was already there was already tension going on between the Jews and the Samaritans, of course, at that time. And the thing is that there's also some stories, I think, in the Jewish Orthodox world that accuse Samaritans of helping the Romans destroy the Second Temple, right? Now, this is, I think,
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, and I think that's the nail in the coffin. I think that kind of caused people to kind of have this hatred, some people to have this hatred on Samaritans, and to the point where I think in some societies it's forbidden to sit or touch a Samaritan. I'm not, this is not really something for all the Jewish people. I mean, we have really good connections with the vast majority of the Jewish people, but there are some people who have this view of us. So
just to clarify, you said the Aron, according to your tradition, the Aron Abrit is actually still in Har Gerizim.
It's hidden somewhere here, yeah. And then only the Mashiach, or the Taib, we call him, will reveal it one day, yeah. You want to help search for it, David? Come.
Let's go through. And it's supposed to be on the temple?
It's not like exactly on the temple. It's somewhere. Maybe it's in a tunnel. The tradition says that it might have been in a tunnel around Mount Gerizim.
By the way, you know what else is supposed to be there? And this could be a big reveal if we ever find. According to the Hebrew, the Jewish book of Yeshua, Joshua bin Nun, who was the conqueror of Canaan, which is a separate issue. It's a divisive issue that we should talk about another time. There's a Samaritan book of Joshua.
True,
completely different version. And I want to talk about, before we go, I want to talk about this because we have a project that I want to tell them about. Sure. But according to the Jewish book of Joshua, when the Israelites come into Canaan, they write the Torah on tablets, huge tablets, the entire Torah on tablets. Where do they put it? According to us, they put it on Harival. Now you want to know what's the more correct Torah. What if, imagine we find those tablets that they're still on Harival, and we can just read it and see who changed what.
Interesting.
Now, if it's there, I mean, that's
Yeah, that's a cool point. That's a cool point. We do have a completely different book of Joshua. That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, the tablet that you're describing, you mean the one that was found on Mount Ebal recently?
Was it?
Yeah, there was a cursed tablet found on Mount Ebal. I'm talking about.
Well, okay, tell us more about it. I haven't heard about this.
Well, I don't know a lot of details. You can search it up and probably learn more. But there were some people who, in the archaeology that has been done on Mount Ebal, other than the altar that was found and that is believed to have been Joshua, we don't believe it is exactly because it's exactly the Joshua altar because we believe it was already built on Mount Gerizim. That's a whole story, the other story. But there was this small, really cursed tablet. I mean, they call it a cursed tablet, but it might as well not been anything. Some people would argue just a.
What do you mean by cursed tablet? What is that?
It's a small. I don't know how.
Oh, a curse, like a curse.
Curse. Yes.
Oh, okay. And it's written in Samaritan letters
Not
or
even
in
Samaritan.
Canaanites.
I don't even think the language was identified. It just looked like it had some kind of a cursing written on it, and some people just say it's cursing. It just might have been dismissed completely by other people. That is just some other hooks, So
what I was referring to is that a copy of the entire Torah was written on stone tablets, according to our tradition, the Jewish tradition.
Okay, no, that's
and it was placed on Harival, if I'm not mistaken, Harival. So just imagine that part, our tradition is true, number one, and number two, it's still there. Just underground or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, stone would probably survive more than paper. That's for sure. Definitely more than parchment. So it would be interesting.
Actually, while we're talking about Joshua, I approached you a couple of months ago about this idea that I had. First of all, I just want to reiterate. I really think the Samaritan people, they're a key to this whole conflict. Some people say it's not a conflict, but whatever. You know what I'm talking about, the Palestinians and the Israelis, the Palestinians and the Jews, okay? And you're kind of somewhere in the middle that can help us speak to each other. For example, there's something in the Palestinian narrative that's saying that the Jewish people, they're not indigenous, they're conquerors, they've come to conquer, and as the Palestinians are indigenous, Jewish people will say, no, I mean, we've become a religion, but the religion was a way of retaining our identity in the exile, but ultimately we're a people with a religion. And if you just look at our tradition, we obviously come from this land. You're somewhere in the middle because you ask anybody, of course you're the most indigenous, you identify as Israeli. Israelis, for the Palestinians, they'll say Israel is a completely made up identity in order to conquest the actual indigenous people, the Palestinians. But you are someone who identifies as Israeli, and also you are the most indigenous, according to, if you take the DNA as a meter, as a metric, you're a bridge. I really see you as a bridge that
we really are a bridge of peace in some ways. You're correct on that. Yeah, in between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
So I feel like one of the things that we need to do is we need to think about two things. One, we need to think about the future of the Samaritan people, because like you said, you were 100 people, used to be millions of people. Now in the early 1900s, you were 100. Now, Baruch Hashem, you're like 800.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to think about where the trajectory of, and make sure that the Samaritan people are okay in this landscape. The second thing is that we just need, you're just like such a closed book that needs to be opened up to the Israelis, to the Jewish Israelis. And one thing that I approached you about is the Samaritan book of Joshua.
Yes.
So the Jews have the book of Joshua, but you have a completely different book of Joshua that tells the story what happens after the 5 books of Moses, but from your point of view. And what the most amazing thing about this is, from what I understand, and we still haven't double checked this, but from what I understand, a lot of it's written in Arabic, but a lot of the earlier book chapters are written in Hebrew, but it's not accessible to the Jewish Israeli public because it's written in the Samaritan characters. All we need to do is just transcribe. We don't even need to translate, just transcribe it into what we call Kitab Assyrian, the modern Israeli script. And suddenly we can publish it under the Canaanite publishing company if we open it up, and it's now, your story is now accessible, and should already be accessible because it's in Hebrew, and it just suddenly becomes accessible to the entire Jewish world.
Yeah, I'm excited on this project. You told me about it, and I agreed happily to do it, especially because I have not dug deep enough into the story, because we don't really read it every week or every month or every year even. It's just like this kind of this hidden treasure for any Samaritan to open up and kind of, read, because all the stories that we have to kind of, learn as Samaritans, we are taught by an early age, and even like later in life. And when someone is curious about, more exact details of what happened after the Israelites entered the land, then they go and read Joshua. The only thing is that I think by doing this project, we're not only helping the Jewish people to understand it, we're probably going to help some Samaritans as well, because there's not many copies of this book, just for some reason we just don't print it out that much, so yeah, but
well,
still,
let's work on that.
Is it more an oral tradition, like it's spoken?
True, it's more of an oral tradition. Yes.
There you go.
So is it viewed as canonical? Like, is it akin to the Samaritan Torah, and it has equal weight as legitimate and valued, or is it lesser in a sense?
Probably lesser, and that's because we don't have exact proof that first of all, like David said, it's in Arabic. Most of it is in Arabic, but that's because we probably had some books that we've lost because of the many wars that happened. So a lot of it was probably retained by memory and written in Arabic, because that's the language that we use today. It's in Arabic. Yeah. So we, across 3,000 years, think about it. We used to be 1 million. Now we're 800. So imagine all the amounts of, it's kind of sad to think about, but all the amounts of melodies and songs and oral traditions that we've probably lost because, we just didn't have the time to kind of, pass it down. So some of it is Joshua, and the important things that were written in Arabic were probably important enough for those people to remember it and write it down and pass it on to the next generation. And of course, there's maybe books that we, that I personally have not been, introduced to. There's a huge library in this neighborhood here that I can ask a person here. He's from the Levite tribe as well, to open up for me, and maybe he can be kind enough to show me if there's something connected to Joshua. It's a huge library. He has one of the oldest books library.
How much do you estimate in the book of Joshua? It's a huge book. How much do you estimate is actually in Hebrew?
I have no idea, to tell you the truth, David. I have no idea. It's just that this is a project I really want to work on. We
have to find some time. It's hard with the schedule. I know it's hard with the schedule. I'm busy. You're busy. We have to work on it.
We'll figure it out. Sure. We'll figure it out.
Is there only one copy of this book that you know of, and is it in the possession of the Cohen Gadol, or is there multiple copies that you could access?
There's definitely more than a few copies, but it's just not that many in terms of like it's just not really that available to access. The way I got access to it, weirdly enough, is by a non-Samaritan who wrote about it, really, and translated it to English. So,
wow.
So
that's
yeah,
incredible.
yes.
I have a question about the Cohen Gadol status. So you, I think David mentioned, are the grandson of the current Cohen Gadol, if I'm not mistaken. Are you slated to be maybe not next in line, but 2 spots down the line to be the future
much
Cohen
more
Gadol?
2 spots down the line, but yeah.
More than 2 spots. But,
I mean, to get you an idea
about the succession process.
Yeah, so the successor of the high priest is always the next in age, by age really, to be that has to be from the Cohen family and has to be living on Mount Gerizim. So these are the three rules. You have to be living on Mount Gerizim, and you have to be from the Cohen family that lives on Mount Gerizim. And then if you're the oldest of this Cohen family that is living on Mount Gerizim, and if you're healthy and and you're just the Torah, and the commandments well, and then you can definitely be the high priest one day. It's not very hard, because as growing up in the community, you'll just automatically learn the commandments and what the high priest has to do. There's some melodies that the high priest has to practice, because again, we don't have any rooms for small errors. Melodies are especially very respected in the community. And it's a sign of the high priest, being aware and lucid. You have to have that. If because of old age, the high priest is not able to, be focused enough to do certain tasks, then he's still the high priest, and he still is the one who gives the blessings, but he is not necessarily going to have to, arrange certain meetings to discuss certain, new laws. For example, maybe in a few, 10 years or something, a robot will be introduced to the community, and then someone will have to decide if it's kosher for Shabbat or not. Then that will be a decision for the Levites to, and also the priests of the community, to sit down with the high priest and discuss this. So the high priest has to be cognitively aware, and he has to be able to, take a decision with the community. So to answer your question, yes, I am in line. And even though the high priest today is my grandfather, he's the father of my father, the high priesthood will not go to my father just because he is the son. We have about like 300 Samaritans that are Kohens from the 800. And half of those 300 Kohens live in Tel Aviv. So you have like another 150 Samaritans who are, eligible to be the high priest one day. So in my case, I did not count how many are left in front of me. I wish them all health, and I wish them all to become high priests. It's a huge honor to be one, of course. There's, in the last 3,600 years, there was only 130 high priests, 137 high priests. So to be on this list, it's a huge honor, of course. And
you have an unbroken chain from Aaron Cohen. You know the name of every single Cohen Gadol from Aaron Cohen until your grandfather. And I remember I got a blessing. I got a bracha from your grandfather.
Ah, wow.
Yeah. When I went to visit you on Shavuot a couple of years ago.
Right. Nice. Yeah, so, it's a huge honor to be a high priest, and but at the same time, it's an obligation. And who knows? Maybe in I'm 31 now. Maybe in 40 years.
We're speaking to the future Cohen Gadol, potentially. It's a great honor.
It's an honor for us, yeah.
Honor is mine, thank you. Maybe.
We have a question of someone else in the group. I think after watching a documentary you made you were in about 5 years ago of your community. At the time you weren't married. Now, Baruch Hashem, you're married with a son. He's asking about Brito, if Brito ever ended up getting married.
Brito, no, he's still on the mission to find a wife, actually.
Well,
however, his father was more strict on him finding an actual Samaritan woman. And then after, him becoming 33, I think, he was less strict, and he was like, okay, if you don't find a Samaritan, you can find a non-Samaritan if she proves herself, to keep the laws. And you have to remember something: you're considered a Samaritan from the father's side rather than the mother's side.
The original Israelite way. Let's put it that way. Jews changed around 2,000 years ago, but you guys kept the OG way.
Yeah, the OG way. So that's one thing. So that's why we're accepted to marry a non-Samaritan women. Kind of more, it's just more easily accepted than a male who wants to convert to become a Samaritan. I guess that's one of the reasons why. So yeah, to answer your question, no. Brito is still working on it. Yes.
Okay.
So
hopefully soon.
I want to transition, if it's okay with everyone, to current day politics, if that's fine. I know it's a little late for me and Hayan, so I want to be respectful of Hayan's time as well. David, you hinted at this a lot, but Samaritans are politically in both communities. I think you both have, or the Samaritan community has both Israeli and Palestinian citizenship. If there were Palestinian elections, you could vote in them. In Israeli elections, you can vote in Israeli elections, which is unique. I think you're the only community, if I'm not mistaken, that has that privilege.
Yes, correct.
So very unique. So you don't have to give your own political take, but as a community, how would you classify the Samaritans politically? I think the consensus online that I've read is that they're typically they vote for Likud in Israeli elections. I don't necessarily know their position in Palestinian politics, but that seems very interesting nonetheless. So if you can give us a breakdown from your assessment, we're very interested to know.
Yeah. So we have both communities. So we have Samaritans living in Mount Gerizim, Samaritans living in Holon. The ones who live in Mount Gerizim, like myself, we have we're able to get 3 passports, 3 IDs more particularly. We have the Palestinian, the Israeli, and the Jordanian. So I made a Jordanian passport, for example. It's right here in my desk. I keep it as a souvenir now because it's just lost. It's just finished. It got expired. But I made it because I wanted to go to Dubai one day, and at that time, Israel and Dubai did not have those peace talks. So if you want to go to Dubai, you needed a Jordanian passport. I never used it, unfortunately, but still, it's just cool to have. I guess 3 passports, and you can flex it with your friends that you have 3 passports. But again, we have the Palestinian ID because we have the connections with the Palestinians who live in Nablus, and we lived with them, among them for so long that we started to speak Arabic. That's why we speak Arabic. We lived with them for so long. So our mother tongue is actually Arabic, and we have the Israeli because we are part of the we're kind of like we have the Torah, and we're considered part of the tribes of Israel, right? Even though some might not consider us, but a lot of there's a good majority of Israelis who do consider Samaritans to be parts of the sons of Israel, and the Israeli government, accepted us as citizens. So we are actually citizens, really like any citizen. We have any rights, any similar rights to any Israeli citizen. And we vote in both elections, whether it's the Palestinians or the Israeli. There's today, I don't think that you can say there's a specific majority that votes here or there. We have, as Samaritans, we're exposed to both news, Palestinian news and Israeli news. And, some people might have different opinions of what they want this region to look like, so if they want to vote right or left. However, I can guarantee you one thing, that we love both people. We love both the Palestinians and the Israelis, and the reason is because we have friends among both. And we lived among both. Even the Samaritans who lived in Tel Aviv, they at some point they only left not a long time ago. They left the Nablus. I'm trying to say they still go to Nablus even till today, even though some might argue that their sons might not be allowed legally to go to Nablus anymore unless they do the Palestinian ID. They have to issue a Palestinian ID. As for Samaritans who lived in Mount Gerizim, we issue the Palestinian ID because we go to buy from their stores and we go to their schools. I went to Nablus to learn in the schools of Nablus and to university in Nablus. But it gets a little bit. This gets a little bit tricky sometimes because people ask us, so wait, I don't get it. So are you Israeli or are you Palestinian? Can you just tell me one word? It's not that simple. It's really not that simple because we were here before this whole thing of being called Israeli. And again, there's a difference between Israelite and Israeli, right? There's a whole thing. And I don't really like to give one answer because the truth is that we're not exactly one. Today, it's almost like calling, where there's Jewish people who went to the U.S. and they call themselves American, but originally they're Jewish, but they adopted the American citizens and they love the U.S., but, because they lived with those people all over those years. Maybe some Samaritans today might refer to themselves as Israelis more, especially the ones who live in Holon, because they lived in Holon for so long and they have less exposure, especially the new generation. They have less connection with the Palestinians who live in Nablus, However, though, actually, the ones who live in Mount Gerizim, like myself, the new generation, they're always exposed to both people, that's the Palestinians and the Israelis, because they go to schools in Nablus to learn there, but probably after finishing learning in schools in Nablus, they will go to work in Israel because of the salaries being better and the job opportunities being there. So we have exposure to both people. And some people will say we're kind of a key to peace here. And that can't be further from the truth. I think it's true because we speak Arabic very well here. Yet we go to Israel and we speak Hebrew very well. And then we're kind of a proof that, hey, you can go to both regions and you can handle both people very well. Like, we handle by meaning like you can communicate with them and you can just, you can go without any problems. I guess that's, I think
agree
it's
with you.
Truly a key.
100%.
Yep.
So yeah, does that answer your question more or less, Elijah?
100%. And
Yeah.
for the vision we're trying.
And also, before I forget, sorry to cut you off. My name is Abood Cohen, but it's actually in the ID, in the Israeli ID, it's Abdallah Cohen. And a lot of the times, just a couple days when I was in the hospital and I was like, this nurse was just signing my name or something. She looked at the name and she was like, Abdallah Cohen. Oh, you have to tell me what's the story here. And I'm like,
was this a Palestinian hospital or an Israeli?
It was an Israeli. It was an Israeli. And you can guess where this went. It just opens up. And my father was like, oh, this is the key to peace. His name is the key to peace, so yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Who made a joke before we got on with you, who said it's kind of like a name that you would have that's like the most Arab Jewish name you could think of, right? Like Abdullah Abood Cohen. Like
I thought it wasn't real, bro. I thought you made it up for online alias, but that's crazy that it's real. It's like amazing.
Ahmed Weinberg. Are you familiar with this comedian? Ahmed Weinberg. It's like that can't be a real name.
Yeah. What's his name? Ahmed what?
Ahmed Weinberg. He's Muslim, but his father's Jewish.
Yeah. Weinberg is very Jewish, you mean? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, his father's a Jew who converted to Islam.
Names tell stories, so.
You were gonna talk about kosher. I just didn't want that to get passed by the wayside. If you guys wanted to bring it up, but again. Sorry.
Please do. You brought up differences between Jewish kashrut and Samaritan kashrut, and maybe you could elaborate a little bit on those differences.
Sure. So first of all, let's say what is similar. What is similar is that we have the first 5 books of Moses, right? And in the first 5 books in the Torah, there's written some laws, of how you should, what you should eat and what you should not. You shall not eat pig, and you shall not eat anything that has, the how do you call those, the
cloven hooves.
Open hook. Yeah, exactly. We have that. We have the exact same thing, and it's not very hard to to see what's allowed and what's not. However, there are some tricky things, for example, that does need interpretation. For example, you shall not cook the lamb in his mother's milk, right? Or not lamb. What's the word? Gadi?
A kid. Gadi.
Child.
Okay. Which in English, I think it might have another word.
A kid. A baby goat.
A baby goat. Yeah, you shall not cook it in its mother's milk. Now, in our case, we also do what the Jewish people, does as well, and that is, we are not allowed to eat milk, eat anything that has milk, or eat any meat and then drink milk. We don't do that. We have to wait a few hours before we do that. So
can I just stop you? So your interpretation of that pasuk is the same as ours, that it means not to eat milk and meat together?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, at some point it was interpreted like that, who knows what year was that interpreted, but
okay.
Our rabbis, we don't call them rabbis or kohanim, really.
What do you call them?
They're priests.
Kohanim.
Kohanim, okay. Yeah, because it's not clear from the pasuk. It is not. You would think that it means you're just not allowed to cook a baby goat in milk,
Yeah. So it had to go down to the Levites, our Kohens, to decide that, And of course, I think it's worth mentioning one of the most important differences in the kashrut is the meat. So as a Samaritan, you will struggle with meat because we only have one butcher here in the community, and there's another butcher in Holon in Tel Aviv, and he can do a monopoly on us, because we're not allowed to eat any meat outside the community unless you bring your own goat or sheep and you have to sacrifice.
And why is that? Is it because halal and kosher, Jewish kosher is not acceptable?
The reason is because the Jewish kosher is not exactly acceptable, not because the shchita, not because the slaughtering is not correct, but because the verses that you pronounce on the shchita, on the slaughtering, is different and in a different kind of dialect, and also because the direction of the sheep, there's a specific way that you align the sheep, kind of like parallel to Mount Gerizim, has to be directly to Mount Gerizim for it to be kosher. These certain little movements that you do that makes the sheep, and also the slaughter has to be pure and everything. There's these little details. Perhaps one day the Jewish kosher might be accepted. Just today, if you're a Samaritan living abroad, we don't have any Samaritans living abroad actually, but if you do
become vegetarians,
we have to. So that's the name. They become vegetarians, or they have to go and buy the chicken or the sheep outside the land here, and they have to, if they know how to slaughter it correctly, they can just make their own meat and cook it outside.
In a future Canaan, there'll be all halal, kosher, and everything will be backwards compatible.
Inshallah.
Everyone can be able to go to each other's butchers, and the companies will be regulated, in a very inclusive way.
Yeah, inshallah, we'll make life easier for some people here.
Exactly. If you guys didn't have any other questions, I still had one more that I wanted to just bring up as the only time.
It's amazing that you guys are still up. It must be 4 o'clock in the morning for you.
No, I once I heard we were speaking to a Samaritan, I'm not missing this for the world. So I would stay until 5 a.m., 6 a.m., no matter how long it took. I have one controversial question. I wanted to keep it towards the end. It's been in the back of my mind, and it is how you view the current Jewish people and the Palestinian people. So I think it was David who was referencing this battle of narratives, right? Where the Palestinians will say of the Jewish people, you're not the same Jews that we have in the Quran or for the Christians in the Bible, right? You're converts, right? You are not indigenous to this land. Your ancestors converted. Jews will say something very similar about Palestinians, and they'll say, you're not indigenous to this land. Your ancestors were Arabians who conquered the land from the Byzantines, who took it from the Romans, who took it from us 2,000 years ago after the Romans expelled us. What is your perception? Do you view the current Jewish people as the same Jewish people from 2,000 years ago, or the same, or if you want to say your Israelite brethren? And how do you view the Palestinian people, right? Do you view them in many respects? I think there are many Palestinians that you could say in Nablus who are maybe their ancestors were Samaritans at one point and who got Arabized or Islamicized. Do you have that perception, or do you think, no, they're just Arabs who come from Arabia? What is your perception on all of this? I know it's a controversial question, so if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, it's a really interesting question, but let's start by saying that it's definitely not black and white. There's this kind of spectrum going on, because we do have many Palestinians who like they themselves have how do you say, they revealed and they accept and they're even proud to say that their fathers and grandfathers were Samaritan. They're not really hiding it. In fact, one of the most recent families that converted from Samaritans to Islam is called Muslimani. And what is this word exactly? If you can think about it, it's Muslim, Ani. I am a Muslim. Because after they converted to Islam, people still called them Samaritans. But they were like, no, Muslimani, I'm a Muslim. So that's one of the reasons, one of the families. But there's a really good number of Samaritans. And in fact, you should know, Nablus, Shechem, used to be at some point probably more than 90% Samaritan. It's a huge number, and the reason is because it's connected to Mount Gerizim. So the belief about Palestinians being among a lot of them are amongst Samaritans, originally being Samaritans. That's there. Of course, there are some that are not. There are some that really came to. I don't know exactly from where. I'm not exactly a historian on that part, but I'm not saying that they're all Samaritan, that they're all Jews or anything like that. However, when it comes to the Jewish people, we also have the spectrum. There's mostly it's agreed upon that they're from the Jewish tribes and the Judah tribe, and also from Benjamin, and also half of Levi. So we have this agreement that they're the Cohens of the Jews are actually Cohens. We have this agreement, yes. However, some of the community might tell you that perhaps when they went to Europe, that they, they got mixed with a few races here and there.
Sure.
But they still kept the tradition going on, and they still kept, from the mother side. And in fact, in our case, you're not only considered Samaritan from the father side, you can also be from the mother side if the mother raised her children in a specific, way to kind of preserve the tradition and keep on going. So I hope that answers your question.
And you're historically correct. I mean, I think Ashkenazi specifically, yes, they have Israelite heritage, but they did mix, right? I think that's common knowledge. So I think your communal perception is 100% correct, without a doubt. And I appreciate you addressing that. Yeah,
of course.
Hayan, do you want to finish?
Hayan, we missed your question. Hayan.
Yes, Hayan.
Mine is just silly. Just kind of ended off on a positive note. So feel free to if you guys have any more, go ahead.
David, do you have one final one?
Please.
I think I'm good. I'm good. Hayan, what do you got?
Yeah, so just relation to just the ways that I've heard the word Samaritan first time in my life was the term Good Samaritan, and I just wanted to know what you thought about that term and how it's been used and appropriated in TV shows and books and stuff like that.
Oh boy, TV shows. I was rewatching Breaking Bad a week ago. Mm-hmm. And I knew that it was mentioned once. Then I was surprised that it was mentioned twice, A Good Samaritan. Mm-hmm. And I got so excited. One of my favorite shows and one of the most famous shows on Netflix. They talk about the Good Samaritan. Not talk about, but they mention a Good Samaritan. It's funny because in the show, they didn't want a Good Samaritan to appear. He was an annoying person who was going to ruin all the plan. But in any case, the Good Samaritan is a term given to anyone who helps a person who they don't know, on the street or anyone who. Or there's also a law in the court in the U.S. court, I believe, where if someone were to help a person on the street and he accidentally kind of made his situation worse or something with first aid, then he's protected by the Good Samaritan law. And why is this called? Of course, why is this mentioned? Is because there's I think it's in the book of Luke, and the Christian book of Luke, where a Samaritan helped a Jewish person who was between life and death after some thieves came over him and stole his stuff and kind of beat him up until a Samaritan showed up. This Samaritan didn't really care about the ethnicity or anything about this person. He just said, I'm a human, he's a human. He took care of him. And today, all over the world, specifically, in the Christian world, it's incredible that they still use this term. But if you mention to them that, hey, do you know that there is still a community that calls themselves Samaritans? They're like, no way. I did not know that, So this is so whenever I have some Christian tourists, I always like to kind of open up with this, hey, did you know that we're alive,
Yeah.
And that we are good,
So I
keep hitting them with those jokes. I hope it was a good tour, Hope you have a good day, Good Samaritan.
The irony of that
you should
is
reclaim that somehow, call your tour company Good Samaritan Tours or something.
I
the
thought
irony
about
of the term.
Yeah. I thought about it once, but still, it's. I'm glad that it's used for good things, for good deeds.
Definitely.
So where the term comes from. It's a bit ironic. Do you know where the term comes
because
from?
the Samaritans were considered bad, and there's a good Samaritan at some point, right?
Oh, actually, I didn't even. I believe it's where it comes from is from the Christian Bible. Am I right?
Yeah.
He explained it from the book.
I did say it's from the book of Luke. Yeah.
But what's ironic?
Yeah. Sorry. Go
Well, it was Jesus. But what's ironic is that actually interaction between Jesus and the Samaritan, Jesus actually being a little bit condescending to the Samaritan. If you actually read it, and this is not to be disparaging to, I like Jesus. When a Jew is talking about Jesus, usually, especially if I'm going to give a criticism, it's a bad look. No, I think Jesus is also a very big key to all this. the whole peace thing, because the Muslims are waiting for Isa, the Christians are waiting for. It's just this big thing that's overlooked, that the Christians and Muslims, you agree with everything. You don't realize how much you agree. But getting back to the actual context, the original context of the Good Samaritan, she helps. It's a woman Samaritan that helps him, gives him water. But then they go into a conversation, and he kind of says, "You don't know what you're talking about," because she starts talking about the temple that is supposed to be on Har Gerizim, and Jesus says, no, it's supposed to be in Jerusalem. So
actually, Jesus tells her not to. I think. Are you sure because I'm sure he tells her in the story in the book of John that she tells him, we believe in this mountain to be the holy place, but you say it's in Jerusalem. But he tells her it's not going to be in Jerusalem, and it's not going to be in Mount Gerizim, but it's going to be in the kingdom of God is within. That's what he explains.
Is that what he says?
Yeah, okay. He says the kingdom of God is, or the Lord is within. It's something like that. So,
this is a good question. Is that is there a Samaritan stance on
the
Jesus?
story? I mean,
Jesus, not the story, but Jesus.
There's a little bit there. I mean, he is considered to have brought peace to the region in many ways. He we don't really have any negative views on him, really. There's this thing where
with the Byzantine revolts, I would have suspected there might have been some animosity because there was probably some forced conversions. I know there was some forced conversions, and that sparked a lot of issue, actually. So it's interesting that you've kept that perspective, because in Jewish tradition, if you read some text, there is not the best perception of Jesus, especially because of what Rome did to us and subsequent stuff. But it's incredible that you do have that position. I'll add that.
I mean, what we have today of any text left, we have a good amount of text left, but what we have today does not really mention anything bad on him, but not particularly praising him or anything. It's just that he really didn't particularly brought any wars here, so.
Okay.
That's good enough, I guess, for us,
I think that's a great ending point, a point of unity.
All right.
Abood, you're amazing, man. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Very nice meeting you.
Absolutely. Looking forward for our next one.
Inshallah, Bezat Hashem, that comes soon, man. 100%. Hayan is recording, so we'll rely on him to get that uploaded. But thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Amazing. Looking forward.
Take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Speak to y'all soon.